All right, we are live. Hey, today I got Jonathan Hayashi on with me. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm real excited. I'm stoked.
Yeah, cool. Well, Jonathan and I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago together a good whopping, how many years ago was that now?
Oh, goodness, time flies, right? When did you graduate?
I graduated in 13, so I
Yeah.
started in 2010, so my start date was 10 years ago. So
So it's been like 7, 8 years
yeah,
almost. Yeah.
that's crazy, man. Yeah, so Jonathan is a prolific writer. How many books do you have written, Jonathan?
I don't know about that. um, yeah, I wrote a few books and contributed a few chapters here and there. So yeah, I'm really thankful to the Lord for opportunities for writing projects and stuff like that. Hoping to get my doctoral dissertation published now. So we're in the kind of conversation with that. The
Cool.
publisher. So
What's the topic on that?
yeah, so it's just really on the importance of local church and how we cannot really grow as Christians. You know, we can't have kind of this postmodern individual consumer mentality culture and say I have one-on-one with
Mm,
Jesus without the church, right? We can't say I love Jesus but I hate the church, and how
right.
that kind of comes in clashing of what God intended with doctrine of the church, ecclesiology, and the importance of what regenerate church membership, RCM, and how that plays in a role, and what are some historic and theological components that we see there. So, in the one another ministry, which I kind of mainly focus. So,
Yeah. And then
inerrancy of scripture,
what's your website so
progressive
people can find your
sanctification.
stuff?
Yeah, so just really my first and last name, jonathanhayashi.com. And so you can check out the podcast, others, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, to give context to our friendship, I met you at the beginning when I think you were a sophomore at Moody, and we kind of had a
Yeah.
Japanese connection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jonathan tutored me quite a bit. I studied Japanese for
I don't
quite a
know about
while.
that, man. You knew so much more Japanese than me, actually. I'm kind of embarrassed
Hardly.
with my Japanese, even at this point.
I think it's really kind of funny. I love your mustache. It kind of reminded me of Natsume Soseki had a pretty
Oh,
similar.
hey,
Yeah, so
thanks.
you got that whole author thing going on.
Yeah, I just started growing out for fun. People were like, "Why'd you start growing?" I was like, "I did a no shave November and shaved everything except kept the mustache." And I asked my wife, "I'm like, what do you think?" And she's like, "I think it looks great." So I kept growing it, and 3 years later, I'm here. So
I for me it's more like, do you ever watch Santa Claus, the old Tim Allen movie, and he shaves off his
yes,
beard and it grows right back? That's
yeah,
basically what happens for me.
that's
So
your
I just
story, huh?
yeah, and I'm sticking to it. Um, well, I thought it'd be fun though to introduce people to your conversion story. You kind of went on a wild ride, and how Christ changed your life, and I love to hear it.
Yeah, so just real quick, so I was actually born in Kentucky, so I'm a Japanese redneck saved by the blood of Jesus. So how about that, right? Can't beat that. But moved to Japan majority of my life, and that's where I grew up. Which you know, you know, Japan is such unreached nation. Statistics, I think the Joshua Project said, Japan is the second least reached nation in the world today, according to the population density. And so it's just unheard of, because when we think about mission trip, we think about somewhere in Africa, right? Like maybe Senegal, or Zambia, Tanzania, or somewhere in East, Southeast Asia, in Thailand or Philippines, or maybe Haiti, right? But not Japan. So it was hard growing up, 50% Buddhism, 50% Shintoism, which are far, far from Christianity. So kind of grew up in that context, which is real tough, just being transparent. But thanks be to God for a praying mother, and just had a major impact in my life. And I think around 16, just really kind of began to walk in the pattern of this world, as Scripture would say, and was conformed in the reality of the likeness of this world. Loved the very things that God hated, hated the very things that God loved, and was just in misery and sin. And age 16, the Lord allowed me, in His sovereign kind of plan, just allowed me to meet this pastor. His name is Pastor K. And he shared the gospel, and my life was forever transformed by the good news of the gospel of Jesus.
Where did you end up meeting him?
Yeah, that was like Tokyo area. Yeah, so I lived in Shizuoka, which is central Japan, just 3 hours away from Tokyo. And I met him there. And yeah, life forever was changed and transformed because one who's faithfully just sharing, declaring, and embracing the gospel. So yeah, so that's a bit about my testimony, which really is not even my testimony. It's God's triumph and grace working in and through my life. So I give God all the praise.
Yeah. What happened after that? So you met a pastor in Tokyo and were converted at that point in your life.
Yeah, so at that point, I was kind of kicked out of school already, and was kind of in a lot of trouble. But I remember at that point, after I got saved, I remember thinking, the only thing I want to do in my life is to preach the gospel. I think Charles Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers, said it really well. Life and death in eternity in the world unknown hangs on the preaching and the hearing of the word of God. And I was like, man, that's what I want to give my life to. The world needs to know this news cannot be kept to myself. So I just remember I'm going to give my life, and I want to become a preacher. I want to become a pastor who was the real deal. Pastor K, like him, I wanted to share the gospel because I realized the gospel just didn't come to me. I realized the gospel came to me because it was headed to someone else. That the task of disciple making was entrusted unto me so that I can make disciples who begin to make disciples of others. So fast forward, the Lord allowed me to go to a Christian academy at a boarding school, and that was a really formative years of my life, and just really thankful for men and women, men of God who are in my life, who poured into me and loved me and modeled what it meant to emulate Christ. And after that, during that time, I read a life of a man called D.L. Moody. Maybe some of you know, the world's greatest evangelist. Who would have thought? A man who's stacking size 9, 10 shoes and was uneducated, had a 5th grade English level. I mean, people call him Pastor Moody. He would correct them and say, no, call me Mr. Moody, because he was an unordained man and becoming the world's greatest evangelist, had a passion for souls. And I think I was reading his life, and it says, at one point he says, the world has yet to see a man who's fully yielded to the will of God. And he said, by God's grace, I aim to be that one. And I was thinking, if God could use Mr. Moody, could he use a wretched, wicked sinner like me? So wherever that school is founded, which God bless the school that D.L. Moody founded, Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, Illinois. That's where I wanted to go. So I applied, and that's where I guess you and I met, in 2010. So,
but your education didn't stop there, did it? You've been kind of piling on them books.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy because, as I mentioned, I got kicked out of school. I couldn't study. I had a GPA 1.2 at that point in Japan, and I just could not study. But nothing in my hands I bring, but simply to the cross I cling. And as Paul would say, I boast in the cross alone, simply within the cross. I was able to graduate actually high school with a GPA 3.75, and I just had a desire to learn and grow and read. I just read every book possible that I could, kind of latch on. So went to Moody, and it was hard. Moody was, it really prepared me for ministry. I continue to look at stuff even as I'm in pastoral ministry at this point. I prepare sermons. I'm looking at books I've read at Moody that I read 10 plus years ago. Then, the Lord allowed me to further education. So I went to seminary, the Moody Theological Seminary, and that's where I received my master's. And then I felt like I just need to learn more how I could shepherd better God's flock. So the Lord led me to work on my doctorate at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. Perhaps some of you know Albert Mohler, who's the president there. And God has just been so kind and gracious. So give him all the glory.
That's awesome. So it sounded like earlier you have a big burden for the individuals in church, those that might say, I love Jesus, but I hate the church. Can you kind of address that and speak to maybe some of those people that might be listening?
Yeah, so I've noticed more and more and more, it seems like just even, I was in the dialogue with the author who's an evangelical, who's a professor at Baylor, and it was an excellent book. Just left my mind who the author is, but he's also a professor at Midwestern Theological Seminary in Kansas City, who teaches their historical theology. But the whole term evangelical or Protestant has been kind of hijacked and just so misunderstood, which kind of comes to the point that I want to share is that just being a Christian, the terminology Christian is so confusing today. And what does it mean the local church plays in a role with church membership? That has been so misunderstood as well. Today, there's such a, perhaps maybe the seeker-friendly movement and just kind of anti-institutionalized age that we live in, that we're against authority and we don't like institutions. And, we see it, just in general, like in, for instance, churches, we see Grace Community Church, right? Or Faith Friendship Church, or Family Church. There's a lot of terminologies that they use even in Baptistic world. They take out the word Baptist, or the Presbyterians would take out that word and insert another word because we are such in an age that we're against the local church, but we can't really have the universal church apart from the local church. And I think, for instance, I was in Bible college in Moody and wrote a thesis based on Mark Dever. Maybe some of you know from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., with 9 Marks Ministry, with the landmarks of the healthy church. And that really just ignited my heart and my love more for the local church. And
Great resource, by the way.
Great resource of what it means to be a healthy church with all the movement of church health, church growth movement, what it means to be faithfully, biblically, theologically, scripturally grounded, convictional Christian. And I just began to realize, we really cannot be Christians apart from the local church, and how God designed the local church for spiritual growth, and what God intended for us. Ephesians 3 says the mysteries, the has been foreknown and foretold through the bride, through the church. So that's kind of like the kind of idea that I wanted to really focus on. Just we really need one another. That one another component cannot be divorced. Some people say, I've been a Christian, but I haven't been to church for 30 years. And it's almost like I'm coming to you and saying, hey, I love my wife and I've been married, but I haven't seen my wife for 30 years. Well, it's questionable whether you're truly married to your wife. What does that even really mean as being a follower of Christ? So just kind of bringing that idea into what it means for us to really truly faithfully walk with the Lord vertically, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but to love your neighbor as yourself horizontally. How that all intersects and connects as we grow as Christ followers. So that's my idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the focus of this channel is normatively about apologetics and other worldviews and how we interact with unbelievers around us. But one of the greatest apologetics that we have is our interactions with each other. That's how the world will know that we're his followers, by our love for one another. So I think that's great that you're devoting a lot of your research in that direction, John.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just really ignited my heart. I just realized as I wrote one of the books, which I haven't mentioned, it's called Ordinary Radicals, A Return to Christ-Centered Discipleship. I think discipleship has really been cast aside on the sidelines. That we are passionate and we are ignited about certain topics that we talk about. And, apologetics is, crucial. Missions is crucial. And, systematic theology, which I love and, love studying, diving into Grudem, Erickson, John Frame. And there are a lot of great resources, but, discipleship is the heartbeat of what God has really commissioned, right? It's called the Great Commission, not the great option to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it's like the great command that we have been disobedient. We have cast aside. So, that's kind of where I just began to study and just realize this discipleship, disciple making is where many of our churches have lacked. And I think I would even propose where we have kind of stem of the great decline of evangelicalism in the 21st century, because we have cast it aside, in that we don't even consider Great Commission. It's a call for all. It's a costly call, but it's not by the few for the few, but it's by all the people by all the saints for all the people. And until we are return to a Christ-centered discipleship, not just the message, but also the method, the great method that Christ himself has modeled and demonstrated, we're not going to see the great 21st century Reformation happen within our churches globally, internationally, and locally within our community. So I'm just convinced of that as we look around in history and the modern days today.
Yeah, amen. And by the way, John Frame, systematic theology is on Audible. So for anybody that wants to get into a systematic theology, spend your 1 credit and get a $50 book on audio.
Yeah, good stuff. I love audiobooks.
I would die without it. Between podcasts and audiobooks is about all I do when I'm driving. I think listening to music might take about 1% of my drive time. Yeah, cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to seeing more of what you produce and what you write. And we'll make sure to let you come on again when your doctorate is finished, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just handed my final one to my supervisor last week, so hopefully I hear back soon with the oral defense.
So soon we'll be saying Dr. Hayashi.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe Dr. J, like from the the basketball, the legend of that. Yeah. Maybe not, or just whatever you can call me.
Sounds good. Handlebar mustache man. No.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Hey, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Go to jonathanhayashi.com. Check out his writings, and we will see you all around.
Thank you.